When you think about the concept of invincibility, your mind probably jumps straight to comic books. Right?
Absolutely.
You think of a superhero just perfectly bulletproof, stepping out of some massive fiery explosion without a single scratch on them.
Right. It's this clean, absolute fantasy of ultimate toughness.
Yes, exactly.
And it is an incredibly comforting archetype for us to hold on to. I mean, especially in a chaotic world. We really like our heroes to be completely indestructible,
Totally.
entirely devoid of any real fragility or, self-doubt.
But then you step into the real world and you start looking at the actual human beings that we project that fantasy onto.
Yeah.
And suddenly that pristine comic book image just shatters into something, well, much more complicated. So welcome to today's deep dive.
We have a great one today.
We really do. We are taking on a massive cultural footprint because for an entire generation of internet users, the name we're examining today is quite literally a punchline about impossible, godlike strength.
Right.
We are digging into the biographical source material of Chuck Norris.
And our mission today is to essentially deconstruct that exact meme.
Right, to see what's really there.
Exactly. Because what the sources reveal is this massive distance between the internet myth of the indestructible tough guy and the highly disciplined, surprisingly complex reality of the man himself.
Because when you actually read through the biographies and all the historical records we have in front of us, the true story isn't about a guy who was born punching through brick walls.
Not at all.
It is a story about a kid overcoming really deep, debilitating childhood trauma.
Yeah.
It's about a man pioneering an entire martial arts philosophy, stumbling into Hollywood megastardom almost entirely by accident.
That's wild.
It really is. And then leveraging that massive fame to push some fiercely held and, sometimes controversial real-world convictions.
It really is the absolute definition of a multifaceted life hidden behind a two-dimensional joke. Yeah. To understand the myth of his invincibility, we really have to start with how incredibly vulnerable he was at the very beginning.
Let's do it.
Because the historical record shows he absolutely was not born a natural fighter.
They're not even close.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're listening to this and assuming he was some high school athletic prodigy, the reality will completely shock you.
Oh, yeah.
He was born Carlos Ray Norris in 1940 in Ryan, Oklahoma. And his early life was, by his own description in the texts, profoundly downbeat.
Yeah, that's the word he uses.
His father, Ray, was a World War II soldier, an automobile mechanic, and a truck driver. But he was also a severe alcoholic.
And we aren't just talking about a casual weekend drinking problem here.
No.
The sources note his father would go on these alcohol binges that lasted for months at a time.
Wow.
Yeah, and this behavior plunged the family into constant financial plight. They were entirely unstable.
This constantly moving around.
Exactly, constantly uprooting from Oklahoma to Kansas, and eventually out west to Torrance, California, after his parents divorced when he was 16.
Which, put yourself in the shoes of a kid living in that environment.
Right.
Think about the psychological toll of that kind of instability. The texts specifically highlight that Norris was deeply embarrassed by his father's behavior and the extreme poverty they lived in.
Oh, absolutely.
And as a direct result of that, he developed this debilitating introversion that lasted his entire childhood. He was not the captain of the football team.
No, the sources actually describe him as completely non-athletic, exceptionally shy, and scholastically mediocre.
He was sort of a ghost in his own life.
That's a good way to put it. The environment he grew up in offered him zero control over his circumstances, which, usually leads a child to retreat entirely inwards.
So the obvious question here is, how does a kid struggling with that level of extreme insecurity transform into a world-renowned martial artist?
Right.
The turning point arrives in 1958.
Yeah, the military.
Exactly. He joins the United States Air Force as an air policeman and gets deployed to Osan Air Base in South Korea.
And that deployment changes the entire trajectory of his life.
Completely.
It's in South Korea that Carlos actually acquires the nickname Chuck.
Right.
But far more importantly, it's where he discovers Tang Soo Do, which is a traditional Korean martial art.
And he just goes all in.
He dives into it with an absolute all-consuming obsession. He eventually earns his black belts and lays the groundwork for literally everything that follows.
I want to throw an analogy out there because this really struck me while reading his early fighting history.
Okay, let's hear it.
We often talk about martial arts as people building a suit of armor, right?
Sure, yeah.
But looking at his childhood trauma, it feels much deeper than just armor. It's more like he was writing an entirely new operating system for a corrupted hard drive.
Oh, I like that.
Like the repetitive physical discipline of karate actively overwrote those neurological pathways of childhood anxiety and introversion.
Yeah.
He was literally programming himself to be confident.
That makes a lot of sense, especially when you look at the mechanics of how he learned.
Yeah.
Because writing that new operating system was a brutal, incredibly slow process.
Right.
He wasn't an instant natural success at all. After his military service ended in 1962, he started competing in martial arts tournaments back in the States.
And what happens?
He lost. Frequently.
Wow.
Yeah. He dropped decisions to Joe Louis and Alan Steen in his first 2 tournaments. He lost 3 matches at the International Karate Championships to a fighter named Tony Tulliners.
I mean, if you rely on the internet meme, you are told Chuck Norris never loses.
Exactly.
But the historical record tells a completely different story.
Yeah.
He spent the early 1960s taking some serious beatings.
And this is where that discipline you mentioned really kicks in. Because he didn't quit when he lost.
Right.
He took those defeats, analyzed his opponent's techniques, adapted his own style, and basically spent a decade relentlessly refining his craft.
Just putting in the work.
Exactly. By 1967, he is finally scoring victories over top fighters. In 1968, he suffers an upset decision to Lou Delgado.
But then he bounces back.
By November of that same year, he avenges that defeat, winning the professional middleweight karate champion title.
And he held that title for 6 consecutive years.
Yeah, 6 years.
He also took the All-American Karate Championship at Madison Square Garden that same year.
Yeah.
And honestly, the wildest part to me,
What's that?
he didn't just win the title. He specifically went back and avenged almost every single early loss that he had on his record.
Wow.
He systematically beat the guys who beat him when he was just starting out.
It's the ultimate proof of your operating system analogy, really.
Right.
He reprogrammed himself from a victim of his circumstances into a champion who completely controlled his environment.
He conquered his own physical and mental insecurities.
Yeah,
But the narrative takes a massive turn here,
it does.
because that immense discipline didn't just win him trophies in gymnasiums, it organically attracted the attention of Hollywood's absolute elite, pulling him right out of the dojo and onto the silver screen.
Yeah, so in the late 60s, Norris was working for the Northrop Corporation and running a chain of karate schools in California. And when you run a high-end martial arts studio in Los Angeles, your clientele isn't just local kids,
Oh, definitely not.
His student roster was wild. We're talking Bob Barker, Priscilla Presley, Donny Osmond.
Donny Osmond, that's amazing.
I know, right?
2 connections from this era completely changed his life. The first, obviously, is Bruce Lee.
Right.
They met in 1968 when Norris was competing for the world title. Bruce Lee was already known in America for playing Kato on the Green Hornet.
Right. He was already established.
Exactly. And they struck up a friendship, training, and sparring together for 2 whole years.
Wow.
So when Lee went to Hong Kong to make movies, he remembered his old sparring partner. He invited Norris to play his nemesis in the 1972 martial arts classic, Way of the Dragon.
And that film just broke box office records in Hong Kong. It's widely credited with launching Norris toward international recognition.
For sure.
But the second key connection was one of Norris's own martial arts students, the legendary actor Steve McQueen. In 1974, McQueen basically sat Norris down, saw his raw potential, and pushed him to take acting seriously.
You didn't just give him a pep talk either.
No, he actively encouraged Norris to enroll in formal acting classes at MGM.
And the rise that follows that advice is staggering. I mean, by 1977, he has his first starring role in an action trucking film called Breaker.
Right.
The very next year, he does Good Guys Wear Black. And the studios actually rejected it at first.
Really?
Yeah, so Norris and his producers literally rented out theaters themselves to screen it.
That's incredible.
It was shot on a $1 million budget and made over $18 million at the box office.
Wow.
He became an overnight, highly bankable, independent action star.
Which leads straight into his absolute dominance of the 1980s.
Yeah.
He was working almost exclusively on high-profile action films with Cannon Films. You get massive cultural hits like Missing in Action in 1984, The Delta Force with Lee Marvin in 1986,
Classics.
and his most critically acclaimed film, Code of Silence, in 1985.
Now, I have to challenge the premise of this Hollywood ascent just a bit.
Okay, go for it.
When you watch those 1980s movies today, was his massive success really about his theatrical range as an actor? Because it feels to me like it was less about Shakespearean talent and much more about perfectly filling a cultural void at that specific point in time.
That's a really good point.
1980s America, still dealing with the psychological hangover of the Vietnam War, it had this deep, ravenous hunger for a stoic, completely indestructible hero.
I wouldn't dismiss his acting entirely, but you are definitely looking at it through the right lens.
Right.
It wasn't about dynamic emotional range. It was about projecting a very specific, grounded authority.
Yeah.
There was a profound, real-world authenticity underpinning those roles that a classically trained theater actor simply couldn't fake.
Like missing in action.
Exactly. Take Missing in Action. This was the first in a series of POW rescue fantasies centered around the Vietnam War. Norris plays Colonel James Braddock, going back to Vietnam to rescue soldiers still held prisoner.
And the emotional anchor there is incredibly heavy when you look at his biography.
It is.
Norris dedicated those films to his younger brother Wieland, who was a private in the 101st Airborne Division and was actually killed in action in Vietnam in June 1970.
See, that is the crucial context.
Yeah.
When audiences watched him on screen in the 80s, they knew they were watching an actual Air Force veteran who had suffered a profound personal tragedy related to the very war depicted on screen.
It wasn't just pretend for him.
No. That underlying grief lends an undeniable, gritty authenticity to those hyper-masculine patriotic roles. It cemented the exact image that the American public desperately wanted to latch onto.
And he rode that specific cultural wave right into the 1990s with the massive television hit Walker, Texas Ranger.
Oh, absolutely.
We all know the premise of that one. It ran for 8 seasons on CBS, consistently ranking in the top 20 programs nationwide.
Yep.
He played Cordell Walker, the ultimate lone wolf vigilante, just solving crimes with roundhouse kicks and absolute moral certainty. It is the pure distillation of his on-screen persona.
But this raises a really important contrast, though.
What's that?
What was happening off-screen.
Ah, right.
While his movie and television persona was entirely focused on violently destroying enemies, his real-life focus during this exact same period was surprisingly about building people up.
Right.
Throughout this entire Hollywood run, Norris was busy creating his own martial arts system and philosophy.
Yes, he founded Chun Kuk Do,
Right.
which translates to the universal way.
Right.
He didn't just stick to the Tang Soo Do he learned in the military. He actively evolved it.
Yeah.
He blended it with Shotokan, Kyokushin, Judo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and American Kempo.
And let's break down why that actually matters.
Yeah, let's do that.
Because Tang Soo Do and Shotokan, they're heavy on the striking, the kicks, the stand-up fight.
Right.
But Judo and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that's grappling. That's taking the fight to the ground, utilizing joint lock.
Totally different.
Yeah, he wasn't just collecting belts for his ego. He was actively diagnosing the blind spots in traditional striking arts and patching them with ground techniques long before mixed martial arts was a mainstream concept.
Ahead of his time.
Truly. And today, the United Fighting Arts Federation has graduated over 3,000 black belts in this specific style.
Now, the physical techniques are fascinating, but the philosophy is what really stands out in the sources for me.
Oh, yeah.
Chun Kuk Do includes a strict personal code of honor consisting of 10 rules to live by. And when you read these rules, they are deeply revealing about who he actually is.
Definitely.
For instance, rule number 2, I will forget the mistakes of the past and press on to greater achievements.
Or rule number 6, I will always be as enthusiastic about the success of others as I am about my own.
And rule number 7, I will maintain an attitude of open-mindedness.
Yeah.
The irony here is just striking to me. You have the tenets of Chun Kuk Do, preaching open-mindedness, celebrating other people's success, looking for the good in all people.
Right.
That feels completely counterintuitive to the ruthless, unyielding, roundhouse-kicking vigilantes he was making millions of dollars playing on television.
It is a massive contrast, but look at where those rules actually come from.
Okay.
This code isn't a reflection of his movie characters at all. It is a direct response to his childhood.
Oh, right.
It is a psychological blueprint he created for himself. Remember the debilitating introversion we talked about?
Yeah, of course.
The deep embarrassment of his father's alcoholism and their extreme poverty? These 10 rules are his personal fail-safe to ensure he never slipped back into the negativity and despair of his youth.
Wow.
It's literally the source code for that new operating system you mentioned earlier.
It is fascinating to see a person build this intensely positive, structured inner philosophical life while simultaneously projecting this lethal, unstoppable outer persona to the public.
Yeah, it really is.
And eventually, that extreme contrast births a third, entirely separate entity, the Chuck Norris internet meme.
Oh man, that meme completely changed how an entire generation views him.
Totally.
Starting in early 2005, an internet user named Ian Spector began posting satirical factoids about Norris on an internet forum.
Right.
There were these absurd, hyperbolic claims about his toughness, masculinity, and virility.
I mean, if you're listening to this and you grew up in the 2000s, you know exactly what we were talking about.
Oh, everyone knows.
Things like, Chuck Norris doesn't do push-ups, he pushes the earth down.
Right.
What's wild to me is how Norris reacted. He could have easily sued or issued cease and desist letters.
A lot of celebrities would have.
Exactly. Instead, he fully embraced the humor. He famously joked on his website that his personal favorite fact was the one claiming his face was added to Mount Rushmore, but the granite simply wasn't hard enough for his beard.
That's great. And by embracing the joke rather than fighting it, he turned a niche internet forum gag into a massive global phenomenon.
It really was global.
It led to incredibly lucrative late career endorsements. He appeared in advertisements for the video game World of Warcraft in 2011.
I remember that one.
Commercials for Polish banks, a massive campaign for Fiat commercial vehicles in 2017, where he served as their tough face ambassador, and even ads for Hoegaarden beer.
There is a surreal duality to his modern existence, though.
How do you mean?
Well, because of those memes, millions of younger internet users know him exclusively as a fictional, invincible punchline.
Right.
They are completely unaware of his deeply serious, real-world convictions. The joke totally overshadows the actual man.
That's true. And the actual man has been incredibly active, both philanthropically and politically.
Let's get into that.
On the philanthropic side, the sources highlight that in 1990, he established Kickstart Kids.
Okay.
This was a program specifically designed to build self-esteem in middle schoolers and keep them away from drugs by putting martial arts training directly into public schools.
That's amazing.
He also spent considerable time as a spokesperson for the U.S. Veterans Administration. Inspired by his own service in Korea, he advocated for hospitalized veterans' pensions and health there.
And he also does significant work internationally that gets almost no press.
Right.
The texts note he supports the Vijay Amritaj Foundation in India,
Oh, yeah.
which helps fund pediatric HIV and AIDS homes in Delhi, a blind school in Karnataka, and facilities for mentally ill patients in Cochin.
Wow.
It's serious, life-saving work that completely contrasts with the cartoonish internet image of a guy who simply punches things.
Just as seriously, though, he has leveraged his cultural capital to fiercely advocate for his personal, conservative, political, and religious values.
Right, the sources get into this quite a bit.
They do, extensively. He is an outspoken Christian, having written several Christian-themed books.
Sure.
He has also openly supported the intelligent design movement, which is the proposition that certain features of the universe and living things are best explained by an intelligent cause rather than an undirected process like natural selection.
And politically, the biographies show he is a staunch Republican who has never shied away from the cultural front lines.
No, not at all.
In 2008, he was one of the very first members of the show business community to express public support for California's Proposition 8, which banned same-sex marriage in the state.
Right.
He actually openly criticized activists at the time for, and I quote here, interfering with the democratic process on that specific issue.
He has also been highly active in presidential and local politics. Over the years, he has formally endorsed and campaigned for candidates like Mike Huckabee, Newt Gingrich, Ted Cruz, and Donald Trump.
A lot of major figures.
Right. In 2017, he endorsed former Alabama Chief Justice Roy Moore in a highly publicized Senate special election. He even traveled to Israel to voice support for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu during multiple election cycles.
And those endorsements sometimes place him right in the center of intense national debates.
Absolutely.
For example, in 2019, Norris signed a major endorsement deal with the gun manufacturer Glock.
Right, I remember that.
The source material notes this deal was met with heavy criticism from the media, various celebrities, and even some of his own fans. They felt it was highly insensitive timing due to the ongoing increase in school shootings in the United States.
And what we see through all of these actions, whether you agree with his politics or not, is a man who remains completely unfazed by public criticism.
Yeah, he really doesn't seem to care what the critics think.
Not at all. He has masterfully leveraged his fame, combining the gravitas from his 80s action films and the massive cultural resurgence from his 2000s meme status to actively fund his charities and fiercely advocate for his conservative values.
Right.
He essentially uses the massive platform that the myth built to advance the exact causes the actual man believes in.
Looking back at this massive stack of sources, we have traced an unbelievable trajectory today.
We really have.
From an impoverished, profoundly introverted kid dealing with an alcoholic father to a highly disciplined martial arts champion fighting his way to the top by analyzing his early failures.
Yep.
From there, he becomes a Hollywood action icon, filling a specific cultural need for a patriotic hero post-Vietnam.
Exactly.
And finally, a living internet legend who maintains a rigid, uncompromising set of personal convictions off camera.
It is a remarkable story of self-creation, really.
It really is.
The Carlos Ray Norris of 1950s Oklahoma built the Chuck Norris we see today brick by brick, using the discipline of martial arts to rewrite his own limitations.
So think about how you interact with pop culture today.
Yeah.
Because I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Okay.
When you look at the entire arc of Chuck Norris's life, it forces you to ask a fundamental question about fame and identity.
It does.
Once pop culture decides to take a real human being and turn them into a mythological symbol, like the invincible, indestructible Chuck Norris of the internet, how much control does that person actually have over their own legacy?
That's a great point.
Does the actual human being, with all their specific flaws, their childhood traumas, their philanthropic work, and their deeply held political beliefs, do they eventually just disappear entirely into the impenetrable myth we created for them?
It is a fascinating question about who really owns a legacy.
It really is. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the myths, and we'll see you next time.